Welcome back, everyone. Good to have you back with us on a plate full of insights. Super excited to get another episode in. Uh, Here again, my name's Brandon. I'm the manager and a registered dietitian at Revive Wellness. And I'm here with Matthew. Matthew, you want to do an intro for those of you that haven't watched an episode with you in it before?
Yes, I am Matthew, and I'm a dietitian at Revive Wellness.
So we're going to talk today about a topic that I enjoy. I have a lot of fun with this with clients and reading things online about and talking about with people. So we're going to talk about body composition, and specifically body composition and body composition analysis. This is a topic that a lot of people have probably seen online. I mean, we're going to get into what body composition actually is, why body composition matters, what you can do to measure or analyze body composition, and then how we go about doing body composition analysis at Revive and what our approach is with body composition and body composition analysis, and hopefully give you a bit of a peek into why we like body composition so much. Let's get into it. I know for myself, given the areas that I work in, I work a lot with athletes, active people, people that want to change body composition. So it's really good to understand, I guess, what we're even talking about to begin with. But I think, Matthew, the folks that you work with, does body composition come up a lot in conversations you have?
Not to the extent of yourself, where you'd be working with a lot of athletes, but it does come up at times. More so in the context of someone wants to, whether it be weight loss, whether it be muscle gain to support physical fitness, it does come up at times, and it is an important component of overall health, more so than something like weight in itself, which is something that we'll get into in terms of the difference between the two.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what is body composition? Well, if you break down the word, body composition is what the body is composed of. And usually, like Matthew said, we're talking about this a lot of times in the context of somebody wanting to manipulate weight, lose weight, gain weight, build muscle, lose body fat, any of these types of things, some of which have health implications. Well, most of them, they will have health implications, but then also um, aesthetics, function, performance, all of these things can have an element of body composition. But when we break things down, the way that I usually go about it is I talk about the things that you would have if you were not doing body composition analysis, and you were not looking at body composition. You would just have total body weight. So a simple weigh scale, you'd have that. But what body composition does is breaks that into different components, or what some research will refer to as compartments. It's kind of a weird way to refer to the body as having different compartments in this sense, but that's really it. So some will break it into fat mass and fat-free mass, and some will break fat-free mass into two further parts, which is lean body mass and bone mineral. So we have 2 to 3 components there, but basically muscle versus body fat are the ones that most people are interested in, and in some situations for bone mineral density also can be useful. So a lot of times when people are thinking about things that relate to weight measurements, like how your clothes fit, how your body looks, those types of things, or any variation of that, a lot of times, maybe without even knowing it, you're referring to or talking about body composition. So all the more reason to have this episode exist in the first place. Did I miss anything, Matthew, about that piece?
No, I think that is a good overview of what body composition is. And now we can get into why it matters, or why someone may be interested in altering body composition specifically. So, first, in terms of why it is different than just weight in itself, body composition will provide more comprehensive information that gives us a better view of overall health. So things like health risk, metabolic health, and it also is going to help us with things like tracking for sports performance, where we're concerned about the level of muscle mass specifically. In other populations, more so those with some conditions like possibly cancer, things like cirrhosis, and also the elderly in general, we may be using body composition analysis to track muscle mass specifically because low muscle mass is something that's linked with some of those conditions. And when you're trying to help someone with recovery, whether that be through medications, whether that be through nutrition supplements, and you want to keep track of how well that's going, body composition is going to be something that you want to track for muscle mass and also in some cases with something like a DEXA, things like bone mineral density, to know where things are going in that regard for something like, let's say, osteoporosis or even some of the other conditions I mentioned. So it's important to note that the level of information you get from body composition is much more comprehensive. There's much more you can do with the information in itself. And it's more of a, you could say, full picture when it comes to knowing what that weight in the body is made up of, knowing how it's changing over time. Like if someone gains or loses 5 pounds, knowing what that is, and being able to just do more accurate tracking in that way.
Mute. Yeah. Great points, Matthew. I think one of the key pieces there that you mentioned are related to what we could kind of summarize as having trends in this type of data. Any data point that you have related to health, always good to have a trend of what those data points are doing over time. Body composition is no different because uh, you knowing the difference between short-term fluctuations in what you would otherwise look at as just fluctuations in body weight, you can get a sense of what those fluctuations are. Knowledge in this sense is power because a lot of people sometimes get stressed over those fluctuations that happen on a day-to-day basis. But then you can also look at it for a longer period over time. And from a body composition perspective, body composition can shift quite a bit over months, 1 year, 2 years, even if total body weight doesn't change at all. I've seen many cases where people have seen their weight not really change that much in situations where they wanted it to, or vice versa. They were hoping to not see a change and it changed a lot. And then in either case, we can look at body composition by doing body composition analysis, see actually what's going on, and you have more information to then make more informed decisions about you and what you're wanting to do. But this also feeds into a bit of what we do at Revive. Matt, tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so body composition analysis is a service that we offer specifically through bioelectrical impedance, which is one of the methods that we will go into and compare. Um, Before we get into that, I do want to just note again that yeah, we could start with the reasons for why we do this. So, as mentioned before, it's a more comprehensive view of what the weight in the body is made up of. And this gives us more information about health. But this also addresses the notion that weight loss is always a good thing or that a certain specific weight is always going to be an indicator of good health. What is going to matter more is the composition of that, which is why it's one of the things that we offer at Revive Wellness. Because, like Brandon said, someone's weight could stay the same, and but the body composition changes. Someone's weight could go up or down in a direction that they are hoping for or they're not hoping for, but that doesn't in itself account for if that weight is going up because of muscle gain, fat gain, or going down because of muscle loss or fat loss. And where that feeds into our work is that once we have this body composition analysis completed for clients, this can be used to guide nutrition plans when working with our dietitians. And it can also be used for clients who just want to maybe come in and then take it to someone else, like a fitness trainer, and take it there. But in terms of how we use it as dietitians, one thing that body composition analysis gives us is a good estimate of the amount of calories or energy that someone's body needs, and the way that this is done is based off of the amount of lean muscle in the body that the machine calculates. And this is a lot more accurate than something like some equations or calculators you may have seen online, where they're really just doing that calculation based off of total body weight, but that doesn't account for how much of that weight is muscle, how much of that is fat. And once we use calculations that take that into account, that gives much more accurate information that can be used for nutrition plans, whether it be setting calorie targets, whether it be setting protein targets. Once we have this body composition data, we're able to dive a lot deeper into the planning with those nutrition plans.
Good point. Yeah, I agree 100% with all those things. It's actually kind of fun sometimes if I have the time or if the client's interested to look at the variety of equations that you can see online, different calculators, what the numbers would be if you're just looking at height and weight versus the ones that you get that use body composition analysis data. Sometimes there's quite a difference. Sometimes there's not much difference, but in either case, it can be helpful um, because then we can say, oh, okay, well, is your body composition actually going to lead to meaningful changes in what we're going to do together with somebody's nutrition plan, for example? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Even if it's not different, it's still good to know and kind of confirm, add a little bit more confidence in whatever the plan is moving forward if those pieces are meaningful for that particular client to begin with.
That confirmation piece is important because even in those cases you mentioned where it is a particular equation is accurate for a particular individual. One, there are a lot of different equations that you can find, and you may get different numbers. And these equations are also more accurate at the population level, more so than the individual level. So once we are using equations that take lean mass into account, that gives you a much more individualized, more likely to be accurate number for a specific person, more so than these equations that just use height and weight and sex.
Because as we'll go into in a couple pieces, I mean, a lot of times with these types of equations, and a lot of times even when people think of alternative ways to assess somebody's health status in this area as body mass index, um, with these equations, there's assumptions built into it such that if your weight goes up, there is sometimes a proportional increase in how much energy that you need to take in order to maintain your weight or increase or lose, depending on what you wanted to do. But sometimes that assumption doesn't always hold true. For example, if you gain a lot of muscle, which leads to your weight increasing, that will, of course, theoretically increase the amount of energy required for you. But if your weight goes up, but it's mostly body fat, that's not going to lead to the same amount of increase in how much energy that you're going to need to consume or how many calories you're going to need to consume on a daily basis, which then has all kinds of trickle down effects on what we do nutrition wise. So hopefully we've established a solid foundation as to the rationale behind why body composition matters. There's multiple elements. Hopefully, a thing in there kind of stuck out as to something meaningful for you that you've either done in the past, planning on doing, wanting to do. And heck, if you're curious about diving into this more deeply for your specific case, then feel free to reach out to us and we can have a chat about it for sure. Let's go into some methods. This is fun talk. I like this part um, about different ways to measure and analyze body composition. You want to start us off?
Yes, I will start with how bioelectrical impedance works and how we use it. And then you can go on to skinfold after. So, starting with bioelectrical impedance analysis, or BIA, in this method, what happens is that a machine will measure the resistance of a current, or sorry, I should say, a current is produced by the machine, and then based on that resistance that it gets from your body, this gives it an idea of the total body composition in terms of how much water is in the body, muscle, and fat. And based off of that, it will give calculations for those numbers. And this is a method that is highly accurate. It produces similar results to some of the other uh, methods that we'll mention. And with a bioelectrical impedance analysis, I should say that something that's important is that it's one area that differs in quality, where there are going to be some machines that are higher quality and they are more accurate because they have more points of contact. So it'll use both the upper body and the lower body to estimate the body composition, rather than some of these machines that just use one or the other. And those machines that use either just the upper body, so those would be considered like a hand to hand machine that you would hold like this, or a foot to foot machine where it just has foot pads. When you have a machine that has all four contact points with the hands and the feet, this tends to give you more accurate numbers. So that's an important consideration there. The benefits of bioelectrical impedance analysis specifically, or like I said, the accuracy, but also it's a lot more quick, convenient, and easy than a lot of the other methods that we'll be discussing. So it's a very short test that you can get done in like 5 minutes. There's no very tight spaces that you're enclosed in, like some of the other methods that we'll mention. It is less expensive than a lot of other highly accurate methods, which is another big benefit. And it is overall just a quicker, more convenient, more physically comfortable type of experience compared to some of the other ones that we will be discussing.
Yeah, those are all excellent, excellent points. And consider when it comes to bioelectrical impedance analysis, a lot of devices that are on the market that do this, that'll sometimes not necessarily explicitly state bioelectrical impedance analysis or BIA, but they'll say body fat scale or body composition analysis scale. Most of them, when you're going on like Amazon or fitness stores, things like this, it'll look like a scale, and it'll have metal plates, metal foot pads, like Matthew mentioned. Those ones, although still probably have merit compared to just looking at total body weight in general and not looking at body composition. But if you're looking for accuracy, if you're thinking about the merit of the numbers that you're tracking, it's always good to look at the reliability of the reputability, quality. Heck, I've even had this same conversation with clients too about which things to get, which not to get, and to an extent with any method. It does depend on how you prepare for it, proper protocols, consistency with those protocols, which for bioelectrical impedance is quite simple, which is another benefit to bioelectrical impedance. So this is a method that I would say is pretty popular, pretty well known. The other really well known method of body composition analysis is calipers, skinfold calipers, or skinfold measurements. Very, very popular, decades ago, before bioelectrical impedance analysis kind of became more validated and a more stronger method. And this one is exactly what you would expect. You kind of take little skin folds at various points on the body, and there's specific points, and some of them are like on the thigh, triceps, lower abdominal area, so chest, and there's various equations that the measurements would then compile and then calculate and estimate body fat percentage or body fat, total body fat, which you can then use to calculate fat-free mass and all those same pieces that we mentioned earlier. The catch with this, though, is that as one would expect, I mean, there's obviously different calipers that you can use, but it requires a high level of accuracy and a good amount of training in order to be consistent with these types of measurements. So there's certain certifications that people can get for this. It's from a group called International Society for the Advancement of Kinanthropometry, and or ISAC. And the purpose of this is to train people to be consistent and take the correct measurements, because once you add a human element to measuring, you're always going to have an increased chance of variability and error. So some places still do this. We even have a set of calipers at Revive in a nice wooden box that nobody uses because we have bioelectrical impedance. But it's still a well known, especially for people that are in like the 30s, 40s, 50s that are old enough to remember when it was used more. There's a few other ones though that are pretty common. You want to go through the next one, Matthew? Take a stab on the next one.
Yes, next we can go into DEXA, which is another well-known and pretty popular one. So the way that this one works is essentially it uses X-rays to do its analysis of body composition. So it will do the different amounts of muscle and fat in different segments of the body. So it'll split it up into like the um, both left and right quadrants of the upper and lower body, as well as the central region. So it's very comprehensive in the different parts of the body it does and how it breaks it down more specifically in the different parts of the body. Another added benefit is that DEXA can also be used to do scans of bone density, which is a very important aspect of health, especially as we get older, where it can help with things like assessing risk for osteoporosis in older age and gives you that extra information. It does take longer, so it can take on the lower end, some of them are more like 20 minutes. If you're doing a more comprehensive one where you're doing both the different segment analysis and bone density and everything, can be more like 30 minutes. But again, you have that added benefit of just having more specific and comprehensive results. It is a bit more expensive, and it is quite a bit less accessible in most cities. And if you live outside of a city in a rural region, then there's a very high chance you're going to have to travel to have access to a machine. So there are more pros, but there are those additional cons of the cost and the accessibility. A lot of the ones that you might be able to find will be in universities that do research or in other similar areas, where some universities will have theirs open to the public for a fee where you can get the test done. But yeah, overall, more comprehensive information, but less accessible. And then next, we can go into underwater weighing, where what is essentially done is the density of the body is measured underwater, like in a not exactly tank, but in a container where you're underwater, and then you also have that density measured when you're not underwater, just with the air. And based on the difference with those numbers, a calculation is done to estimate calculate, I should say, body composition. So with this one, it is more intensive in what you need to do. It is also going to be more expensive than something like a bioelectrical impedance. So there are those additional considerations there. And then one more that I'll go into. So this is better known by a uh, brand name of one of the machines called a bod pod, but it's essentially air displacement, where it's a it's so again, this is on the less accessible side and less available side of things, but it is another highly accurate method. So essentially, you get into the machine, which is then enclosed, and um, this is there are some additional cons here that need to be considered. In that, if you are not a big fan of tighter spaces, or even just for the average person, it can be very um, for the average person, it can even be too much in terms of how tight of a space you're in, and can be rather uncomfortable. So that is a consideration when it comes to that one.
I always laugh when I think of the bod pod because it legit looks like a spaceship. Like such a such an eye grabbing thing, and you have to wear a swim cap for both underwater weighing and a bod pod because any water or air that's kind of all caught in your hair, of course, for people that have really poofy hair or long hair, like that's going to affect measurements. So you have to wear a swim cap. Another potentially con is you have to wear a swim cap. um, yeah, it's a very interesting experience. So it's interesting. So we got body composition measurements done via skin fold. We got electrical impedance. We got X-ray. We got water displacement. We got air displacement. You probably have noticed that all of these things are kind of like dancing around the trying to measure muscle mass, body fat. Now, the question that I know a lot of people ask me, and that you're probably thinking right now, is which is the best one? Technically, based on the research, the DEXA scan is, if the protocol is followed correctly and so on and so forth, is the most accurate. So it's been kind of deemed the gold standard. What is the best method? Is the method that is impossible to use because um, for obvious reasons, is a direct measurement of weighing somebody's muscle mass. That would only be, aka dissection, for obvious, as I'm verbalizing it, it just kind of is very, very obvious that the literal best method is impossible. So that's why we have this array of what would be kind of indirect methods of measuring body composition. And there, so hopefully made that clear that there's reasons why these are all here.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
the alternative,
The,
which is
the
better.
ultimate best method is cadavers, which, yeah, that's
Yes. And so quite a stark thing to think about, but it's had to be said.
yeah. Maybe you can go into, in addition to the logistics, why we choose bioelectrical impedance analysis and the machine that we use specifically.
Yeah. So the machine we use specifically, and as Matthew mentioned a few times, we chose in bioelectrical impedance analysis at Revive Wellness. And although I'm going to contradict myself a little bit in saying that, yeah, it's not the gold standard of having a DEXA machine at Revive. Well, DEXA machines are massive and they require very specific conditions, very tight maintenance schedules in order to actually operate properly. There's a lot of room for error. And I mean, you're dealing with an x ray machine, so you need a trained professional in order to operate. None of us are a trained professional to operate. So it's kind of not really an option. But the accessibility piece, with all the pieces that Matthew mentioned around bioelectrical impedance analysis being, the convenience. You don't have to, the protocol to prepare for it, very simple. Cost, it's not extreme. You can do the tests very close together. You can do them daily, weekly, monthly, and there's no change in any risk. It doesn't the comfort of doing the test itself is not a barrier to doing it as often as you need to do it. Like something like underwater weighing or the bod pod, wherein you have to throw a swim cap on and go into a really small space or dunk yourself in a tank of water. Like those things aren't comfortable, which are barriers to consistency with the measurements. If you actually want to do body composition analysis and get the benefits of consistent measurements, then having a method to do it that is simple, straightforward. Obviously, we follow protocols and keep the preparation for it the same. But which is, I mean, part of our job in how we offer it, which is different than some other places that will just do the measurements at random times of day, fasting, not fasting, dehydrated after exercise, whatever else. It should be done after a period of fasting, and the preparation should be the same, or at least as similar as you can have it every time, every time, every time. And that's what we do. We ensure that so that any changes or lack thereof, we can attribute those with pretty good confidence to whatever did or did not change in your body composition. Not you had a meal right before one day and not the other day that you did it. Well, those measurements are going to be a little bit different, and we won't know what it was. There's also really good research for the company that we've purchased bioelectrical impedance analysis machines from, InBody, it's called, who've actually done research and compared their machines to DEXA scans. And there's also been third-party groups, research groups that have done the same thing. And the really nice thing about bioelectrical impedance is you can do the same measurement time and time and time again. If you have the same conditions, it will pull the same measurement every single time, or almost every single time. Not the same case to be made for skin fold measurements, like I mentioned before. So it's a very repeatable and reliable method, which is great. And there's a lot of forgiveness in that way. But it also means that, okay, well, we have the gold standard of DEXA scans, but we're not losing a ton. As long as things are consistent, it's still valuable. It's still a valuable method. And like Matthew mentioned, we use machines that have 8 points of contact, 2 points on each limb, 2 on each hand, 2 on each foot. We're not using the console controller method of just a handheld device. We're not using the scale, so it's only feet. So professional / research quality machines that we're using, and we don't need a special room. Obviously, we use private rooms so that it's separated from everything else, but it allows us to provide a good experience, not have that large cost trickle down to our clients, and still has a pretty solid level of accuracy that we can then be confident in, compared to what we would otherwise only have, like we said, is just total body weight, which for what we're doing is okay, but we have ways of getting a better picture of health. Why not use it, in my opinion? Those are the things that I can think of. Did I miss any?
No, I think that that covers the key points there. And like we said, in terms of how BIA or bioelectrical impedance is an easier thing to do, just logistically, availability wise, that tracking piece that Brandon mentioned is extremely important. The tracking method that you're able to do most consistently is going to be what will help you track things the best and give you more accurate progress of what is going on in terms of changes in body composition. If it's not viable for you cost wise, availability wise, time wise to repeatedly do some of the other options, then a BIA is a great option to be able to do that.
For those of you that don't have access to any method, another thing that you can kind of take from this is that body composition, while still being a better way to look at health, you can still take some of these pieces and consider. If you only have access to total body weight measurements, still appreciate the fact that if there's changes visibly, physically, function wise, or also changes to total body weight, take some time to think about where those changes may be coming from. While you don't necessarily have the ability to measure them, like if you're doing body composition analysis with one of the methods that we mentioned, still taking some time to consider that. It's very important, and not getting too tied to the specific number as being the sole indicator of success for what you're doing or for health for you as an individual. There is most of the time, if not all of the time, more to the story than just one of those numbers. And if you have the ability and the knowledge and the confidence to have that kind of back and forth with yourself as you're looking at those numbers over time, if that's something that interests you or is meaningful, awesome. If not, we're here to help with that as well in any way that we can support that journey for you at any point. Shall we leave it there for today, Matthew?
Yes, I think that that is a great piece to end off on. If you are interested in getting a bioelectrical impedance analysis with Revive, then you can check out our website. We will put a link in the description that goes over the process that we go through, as well as a link for booking an appointment for it at our clinic.
Awesome. Hope you enjoyed the episode today. Check out everything below, like Matthew mentioned. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.